What's up, gamers? This is the Battle Mallet Podcast. You're listening to episode 740. Yay! This is a podcast delving into the minds of four busy gamers, their annual journey to Nova, the games that they love, playing those games, and balancing life with those games. I'm Jerod.
I'm Danny. Back.
Woohoo! Oh, he's back! Yay! Yay.
I know y'all
was much rejoicing.
Who else
I'm
is
Jason.
here? There we go.
Nobody else that matters. Let's be real.
It's supposed to be Trace, but you know.
Did he say
that?
it?
I said it.
Gosh, we're out of touch. Danny comes in and he messes everything up.
I'm like a very strong spice that, like, when you put it in the dish, that's all you taste. It's all Danny all the time.
All Danny all the time. Oh man. So here in episode 7, thanks to our Captain Timekeeper, I think we'll probably be able to keep things a little more under control. So we're going to be ambitious and try to do 4 whole segments.
Got my stopwatch ready.
Yeah, clicky. So we're going to start out. We'll talk about Vigilus Ablaze a little bit. And then we're going to discuss the contrast paints, which there are some mixed opinions on, I think. So
some contrasting opinions.
Oh.
Ah,
It's too easy.
you're
That
welcome.
doesn't count. You're
Keep that one.
rusty. We'll let you try again later. Danny is going to lead us through a crack glass segment where we talk about some Underworld stuff, and then we have some thoughts on a 40K campaign, maybe trying to get started in our gaming group that we'll talk a little bit about. But before we dig into that, what's everybody been up to? Trace?
I played a game with you, Jerod.
Oh, that's right, you did.
Yes. We played a test game for our respective halves, or doesn't really matter who drives what, really.
No.
The 2 halves of our Nova doubles Age of Sigmar armies. It was a fun game. Came down to just a couple little dice rolls, which is always the best kind of game you can have.
Yep.
Jerod ended up winning it. If I had one character stick around just one little bit longer, I probably would have won it, or
I think
at least.
so, yeah.
So it's always nice when you have 2 players that are really trying to think as much as you can about what you need to do in tactics, and I felt like we did that, and both with armies that we weren't super familiar with, so it was more of an organic experience, which was nice. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought I had a great time, and I was just happy to roll some other dice other than ones that had criticals and supports on it, because all the Lord knows I just roll supports all day.
Yep.
So
yeah, you did not roll only supports.
I did not. I actually
your
had
dice were hot.
They were super hot. I'm hoping that they stay that way when we go to
Yeah,
Nova.
that'd be sweet. Yeah, I think that the quote for the game was
Stop.
Well, that was the negative quote. I was going for the positive one that was, wait, what?
Yeah.
Just with the different synergies that were coming up, even within my own army, that I didn't fully comprehend, just because I'm not familiar. Where I was like, wait, my Reavers are going to have how many attacks now?
Yeah.
Um,
Jerod got to delve into the mind of madness, because I kept spitting all these ideas at him, and he was like, yeah, that sounds good. And then we actually started playing it. He was like, wait, what?
Yeah. And then thinking about it, because obviously we weren't getting full synergies because I was playing against half of what is our army. But I was like, wait, so you're telling me that when we're on the same side of the table and my unit's doing this and your unit's doing that, then all of this is going to happen?
Yeah. So
it was good. And it definitely made me more excited about the concept of playing. And the other important thing is that it made me a little bit more excited about painting. So.
And for those of you who don't really know what armies we were playing, Jerod and I are playing Beastmen and Blades of Corn combined force for Age of Sigmar for the doubles. So Jerod was driving the Blades of Corn with his Stompy Bloodthirster that I didn't have a whole lot of tools to deal with. We will face opponents that have tools to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But he will be supported, because I don't think Jerod realized how fast the Beastmen can be.
Oh my gosh.
So
yeah.
and how quickly you can get units out to help you support and do some cool tactical stuff, like summon on Ungor Bowman that will shoot at people from the board edge. So, so fun stuff. And then I've been painting the Beastmen. Started painting the knights for our 40K doubles list, because Jerod conceded and came to the dark side for me, and so I conceded and went to the light side with him. So now he's going to play his Grey Knights, and I'm going to play my Imperial Knights for our 40K narrative doubles. So I've been working on those, and then I've also been adjusting and tweaking and playing with some ideas for basing for my Black Legion army, which I sent some pictures to some of you guys about. Feedback on that?
Yeah, so I didn't respond. I was at the folks this weekend, so trying to keep the phone not in my hand the whole time. But yeah, so you originally sent some that were black with orange.
Yep.
And I think you were right. Like, I don't think there's going to be enough contrast with Black Legion models on black bases. And then the second set of pictures that you sent, it was like off-white.
It's like a bone color.
Bone color, and
like
then
purple
underlighting. I think that one's going to look good. So if I had to pick between the two of those, I would say to go with the off-white with the purple underneath. The only other option I could think of would be to do bring the black up to like gray with white highlights for the concrete, asphalt, floorboard, whatever, and then stick with the orange. But
my only thing is like, I knew I was going to need to tie in other colors from just different. If I was going to do the orange glow on the bases, I knew I needed to change like my plasma glow on all the stuff on all my models, and so I knew that I was going to have to tie in some other colors from just different things. So I opted to stay with more of the orangey glow on the plasma themselves on the models, and then have more of the contrasting colors on the bases. Yeah. So I do like the orange or the bone and the purple a little better, just from a like tie-in. And Danny, I'll send these pictures to you because I haven't done it yet, because you're the one who knows probably the most about color theory of all of us. So, but anyway, so that's what I've been working on. Danny, what have you been working on besides getting married and traveling?
Yes, I got married. Pulled that off. Didn't screw it up, so that was a plus.
Didn't have to reprime.
Nope, because I never prime, so there's that. Yeah. But in all seriousness, after getting back from the honeymoon and traveling, and kind of getting my bearings, because life is crazy when you spend a month planning a big old party. I've gotten actually a lot of painting done. I've got almost all of my Gondor army blocked in. Like 80% of it is color blocked, and I'm still waiting on 2 miniatures, and then the other, I'll say 15% is like half color blocked. And so my whole strategy with my Nova armies is that I'm going to just try to get them blocked and washed and kind of neat so that they are tabletop ready by the end of June, early July. And then I can spend the next month or two just trying to pick out some details and make them something I can be proud of. But that way I don't show up to the event disappointing any of my partners and having a couple of gray models here or there because I got obsessed with, I don't know, how to shade a cloak or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
So you need some contrast paints.
Yeah, that's all I need. Just a whole world of contrast paints. But yeah, I'm really excited. The Gondor army, man, I'm not gonna lie. When you look at the Lord of the Rings miniatures on a 1-to-1 basis, they're kind of lousy because they don't stand up next to what GW is producing today. But you put an army of those suckers down, they look really cool. And if you're a nerd like me that loves the Lord of the Rings book, movie, all of it,
yeah,
like it's a fun little fantasy. Let me tell you.
That's awesome. So how many White Trees of Gondor have you free-handed so far?
Luckily, none, because they're actually molded onto the shields somehow.
Oh,
Not
nice.
very well, but they are.
Yeah,
I think the
it's really
only
shallow.
yeah,
Pretty cool.
that's like their faces are shallow. They're not good. Like don't like if you put them next to a modern model, they are light years behind. But as a collective, they look really sharp.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but I think the only tree that I'm gonna have to freehand is on Boromir's banners. So because he's mounted
Okay.
and footed, but footed, yeah, that's a word. Um, he is on foot and mounted, and those will need to be freehanded. So.
Gotcha. Cool. Jason, what you been up to?
Well, first off, Danny, it was a wonderful, wonderful party. So really appreciate being invited to be made fun of. It was great.
I had no idea that was going to happen. And I also kind of loved the fact that it happened literally as close to you as it could have been.
Yeah, it was a really, really good time. Highly enjoyable, and glad to have you back. You did go to the pilgrimage, but you did not go to Warhammer World, correct?
Yeah, and my lovely wife tried to get me to do it many times, but I figured we were only over there for, it was like 6 days. We're on our honeymoon, and there's so much to see and do in London as is. That's where I went, was to London. Um, that I couldn't justify putting her on a train, especially on a weekend where it was Warhammer Fest. So I was like, I didn't even know what was going to be at Warhammer World. And so I just was like, I'm not going to make you do that. But she really wanted me to. And so I did what every husband does, and I disappointed her and didn't go.
Well, great.
Yeah.
For my hobby progress, I got in a few games of Underworlds. So while Trace and Jerod were playing Age of Sigmar at one shop, I went back to our normal Underworld shop in Raleigh, and I got three really refreshing games, kind of like what I needed. After playing Trace and Jerod about 1,000 times, sometimes you just need to play some other people, and I took Eyes of the Nine. So I don't know why, but I've transitioned back to them to have some fun. And the funny thing is the deck is really what it was a few months back. It only includes one card from the new sets. So really just, revitalizing that warband, and had 3 great games with 3 great opponents. One game came down to 1 glory. So it was a lot of fun. It was what I needed to re-spark my Underworlds creativity, and I'll be playing Eyes here, for the foreseeable future, at least until Nova, when I go back to the warband that I love to hate. And then, other than that, I think some money is owed because we're at episode 7. And I think when we started this, I said I wasn't going to commission paint any armies, and there was like an over-under.
Yes.
So, yeah, that might have happened. Well, it hasn't happened fully yet, but yeah, the Gits for Underworlds will be going off to get painted at the end of this week. And then because I've had to switch commission artist for the Crimson Fists, the new studio is bringing in a few models of Crimson Fist that they've done before, and Dark Buddy Creatives, they just have a different style of painting completely. They use like a high contrast airbrush style of paint, so I need to see how those models will fit into my current Crimson Fist collection to see how we want to go. But I'm 99.9% certain that my Crimson Fist models will be sent off later this week as well to get my chapter up to speed. Really, just that backlog, man, it haunts me when I get too many models and they're sitting in gray. I totally get demotivated. So it's happening. I mean, who picked episode 7?
Sounds like you need some contrast paints.
I was gonna say, did you say contrast?
Yes.
We need somebody to check the tape because I want to get paid.
I don't even remember what we said. I want to say that I felt like I gave him the most credit, but
You probably did. I think I probably was an asshole and said like 1.
yeah.
I think
I was at like 2 or 3.
I think Danny said 4. So.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to go back and check the tape. We'll report back next episode.
But that's where I stand. And like I said, it's still not 100% official other than the Gits. And I'm looking forward to getting the Gits out there and getting them painted. When it comes to Underworld factions, I send off what I don't want to paint. So like Eyes of the Nine and the Gits, I look at those warp bands and I'm like, I don't want to paint that at all. So those are the ones that I send off.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I have been color blocking black fabric on Reavers, and that's all I've gotten done, I think, since the last time we talked.
Scars?
Yeah, I did the scars, yeah. But I think I had those done.
You don't have like a big day coming up for you soon, so...
Yeah, I'm not like literally moving in 2 weeks or anything. Moving in literally 2 weeks. That's the way that should go in English language. So
it's terrible language anyway. It's fine. Just mutilate it as much as you want to.
Yeah. So I will probably not get any hobby progress done for at least 2 weeks, maybe a little longer, because we're gonna start packing. So, and it's like the small, easy stuff that gets packed up first, and that's paints and models that are already in smaller-ish boxes and things. So. But then after that, we got to get back into it, and because Nova is as of the recording, it is 3 months and 1 day away. So,
wow, that's like no time at all.
No, it's not.
But it's fine. You're moving to the south side, and I mean, just to update you, like we now have access to the community pool, so like we can totally go there, drown the kids, and just hobby while we're sitting there.
Perfect.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's only on public record.
That's right.
There's a lifeguard. That's what they're there for.
That's right. That's awesome.
No, officer. Yeah. There was no motive at all.
No. I don't know. I don't know whose figures these are.
I had to get models painted.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll be great. Sorry, babe. I can't go to the pool with you and the kids. I got to get these models painted. That's going to go over well. No, I'm not ready to put together that IKEA sectional yet. Don't you see these Reaver axes that need painting? Yeah, so that should be good. Anyway, yeah, so I guess that's all we got for what we've been up to. So why don't we take a break here, and then we'll kick into some talking about Vigilus.
Welcome back. We're going to dive into, or at least talk about, Vigilus Ablaze. So with Danny rejoining the crew here for this episode, it's time to talk about some 40K and some narrative stuff. So first impressions of the story, guys. Danny, what were your thoughts?
I wish there was a word that described the sound of a trombone slide. Like the womp womp womp.
There should be a word for that.
Right? Trombodenfreude?
Trombodenfreude.
Going with it. I thought it was kind of a letdown after the first part myself. It did what 40K lore always seems to do, is it sets a table, asks you to eat, and then takes away all the food right as you pick up your knife and fork.
I mean, Jerod, do you echo his statement?
Yeah, I was going to say that's a pretty apt description. I mean, so the story, I think in and of itself is interesting, but it just seems like they set things up to be like a high stakes kind of open environment, and then they just take it all away. Like nothing of import happened. So you spent all this time reading the fluff in the book, which is kind of what we were reading the book for in the first place. With Vigilus Defiant, there was a lot of new stuff revealed and some new lore, and watching a Gene Stealer cult revolution be fleshed out, and learning about speed wogs and regular wogs, and the fact that the Blackstone was found in a lot of different places, that it was a mineable resource on this planet of all things. Like they're setting all of this up and fleshing all of these things out. And then in this one, basically the planet is right back where it started before anything crazy happened.
Oh man, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the gravity's a little different though, so
Yeah, that's true.
Big
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the gravity is a little different. And I don't know.
That's
the
what I
reason
paid
for that might be-
$50 for, was to find out the gravity was a little different.
Yeah, but why the gravity is a little different is interesting. So
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's plenty of interesting moments in Ablaze. I think, as always, the creative team has a lot of cool ideas and a lot of interesting bait on the line, but I think I just want them to go there. I think they're really afraid to go there with any of their story, and I think they kind of hide behind this idea of, oh, well, we're just creating this sandbox for the players to play in, and I don't even think that they're really doing a good job of achieving that, because personally, when we talked about the first half of Vigilus and Vigilus Defiant, we were all really excited because it was like, here are all the factions, they're all involved, they all have reasons to be there. There's different characters, different biomes, different settings, and it gives you a really fun and unique place to play the game, and you can kind of create your stories around that greater story. But then in Ablaze, they kind of undo so much of that I think it actually leaves you in a less creative and less inspiring sandbox than where they started.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Like after the first book, it was like, I want to dive in. Like, there's so much content there that you can expand upon and make it your own battle on the tabletop, right? And Ablaze, it kind of answers a lot of those questions. Or, for me, and correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while since I've read through this stuff, but basically a lot of the fights, like the WOG and the Gene Stealer cult battles, kind of end, but they don't really describe how they end, right? It's just like they're fighting and yay, we've done it.
It basically, like, Calgar kind of like baits the WOG into the Gene Stealers, and it's like, all right, and that's problem's fixed now. They'll just kill each other.
Well, and it talked about how, like, I guess the orcs being on the planet, like, triggered the Gene Stealer cult plans before they were ready fully, and so it kind of fizzled out because there wasn't enough support or something.
Yeah, and then, so to me, I think something to that, it kind of felt crappy at the end of the day was, like, in the first one, they didn't really flesh out the whole Drukhari thing, but they just kept kind of like, oh, and now there's these Drukhari raiders, and they're kind of just ravaging this one city, and that kind of gave you a really cool spot to, if you were a Drukhari player, to say, hey, I could make my army, fighting in this part of the city, and we can make these missions based on these kind of, raids and all of that. And then in the second book, it was like, oh, and then some demons showed up and all the Drukhari ran away. And it was like, oh, all right. Cool.
Yeah, that was fun.
It's a little bit disappointing. It's almost like we should have stopped at the first book. But as 40K enthusiasts, we want answers, or, for the last few years, they've been like, we're going to push it forward. We're going to push it forward. And they've pushed the setting forward as far as the overall universe. But these stories continue when with the campaigns, these stories lead up to defining moments, and they never really push the story forward.
Well, they use a lot of the same tropes over and over again, too. I mean, I thought my eyes were going to roll out of my skull when, yet again, Space Marines had to make a peace treaty with the Eldar, and the Eldar just saved the day. Like, we know that I have my personal bugaboos with the Eldar, but I can put that aside and try to say subjectively that is maybe the single most boring 40K plotline that has existed in the last 10 years. Because it gives me no reason as a player to want to play against Eldar. It's so predictable that if there's Eldar in a story, it's like, well, they're going to have some mysterious reason to want to help the humans. Like, it's overplayed, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a telegraphed Eldari ex machina.
Yeah, Eldari ex machina, exactly what it is. You see it coming from a mile away, And it's just always it's the same crap, right? Like something happens and the Imperium and the Eldar are at each other's throats, and then some Imperial statesman, usually one of my boys in blue, trot out and they're like, "Hey, we all want the same thing. Can't we just make peace for the day?" And the Eldar are like, "Well, we have our sneaky reasons, so yeah, I guess we will." And let's just bring all this crazy technology and our ninja skills, and we'll do all the things that the 8 feet tall superhumans couldn't do for some reason. And it's like, why? Why are we doing this again?
Yeah.
And for me, and I understand why, with the story is they're afraid to kill off main characters. And, in today's day and age with movies and dramas and all things that are great, those books, movies, whatever it may be, they're willing to kill off main characters. And because this game is based around models, I feel they have a hard time saying so and so is gone, or this is so and so storyline. So when we get to the pinnacle of this book, something happens to prevent that again. And I'm trying to not give spoilers. If you guys want to give spoilers, you can, but it just is like, oh wait, we fight. Someone's gonna die. This is gonna be the breaking point. Oh no, some random thing or some well thought out thing, but it's kind of random. The Hail Mary works out, and they're saved. So
Yeah, well, I think it would be so freeing for them to kill off characters because the models exist and because the stories exist and because the game can kind of live in a time vortex, right? Like just because they kill off a character in the plot of the books doesn't mean that you can't play a game that took place before that event. And so if they killed off characters, that's it. They don't have to keep redesigning them. Like how many models of Marnius Calgar have we had? They could just stop and be like, this is it because this was what he looked like at the time of his death. And if you want to play with him from before that battle just took place before that event. And now they have all this open space to design new characters and create new stories. I think it would be super freeing, but it is disappointing to see that they're so afraid of it.
Well, there's obviously an audience for that because look at all the people who play Heresy, right?
Right.
So and you have all these people in the world that play, historic miniatures games. Like that doesn't matter to them. They can, if they like that character, they're going to play that character. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, like when Magic the Gathering is more willing to kill off main characters in a freaking card game that has like such a weirdly structured way to deliver lore, but a game like Warhammer where they have the game is based in 100-page books every edition. And they just won't do it. They won't budge, and it's kind of maddening.
Yeah.
And it's not like it would even affect like competitive gameplay either, right?
No.
Like I mean, think about after the Primarchs drop. You would at a tournament, you hear stories about Magnus and Mortarion versus Magnus and Mortarion, like who, first of all, have no business working together. And second of all, like, why are there two of them on the table?
Right.
People are going to play what they're going to play,
Mm-hmm.
Based on whether that, model is, quote, efficient or not. Not based on, Marnius Calgar is the coolest character in the lore. So it's not like that they would lose sales on that end either.
Yeah, I mean, because we're going to do that right now, right? Like with a Blaze storyline, we don't really like that. Like if we ever revisit it, it's just going to be Vigilus Defiant. To me, it will be. Like the only thing I liked in a Blaze, and I would be remiss to not mention it, is that there was a fallen base on the planet and the Dark Angels were just attacking it in the large swirl. That was my favorite part. It's really the only part I care about.
Well, and I mean, and that base was pretty integral to kind of the major plot points.
Yeah, but even that I still kind of felt was somewhat underwhelming because there was some Deus Ex Machina as to why the Dark Angels couldn't get there. Right. And it was kind of like a wasted plot point, I thought, because it was cool to find out what was there, and then what they did with it was kind of like, oh, all right. And now we're on to Act 4.
Yeah. So enough bashing the story. I mean, still, thank you for GW for giving us this wonderful campaign. It's definitely a setting that people can grab a hold of. We like the first book, not so hot on the second part of the storyline, except for the fact it introduced some new units and new rules. And because Trace is our Chaos player, I mean, Trace, what did you think of Ablaze from a rule standpoint for your faction?
I mean, it opened up a ton of new opportunities for many Chaos players, not just like Black Legion players, because it introduced the Renegades rules, like the independent Renegades rules. And then like got all kinds of new units. They revamped a bunch of units that needed some love. You know, the Lord Discordant is like one of the coolest models I've ever seen. And it's a really strong choice in, you know, for narrative and for competitive play. Like it's getting a lot of play competitively. And then they tweaked the Havocs because, like we talked about before on the show, like they design the models first and then they come up with the rules after. And so when they design these new like beefy Havoc models that had like these stabilizer talons and stuff on them, like of course they made new rules for them. Now they're toughness 5 and don't suffer penalties for moving and shooting. Like I think they offered a lot of cool new ways for you to play your Chaos Marine armies, and you actually will see Chaos Marines on the field now, mostly because of one of the Renegade rules that they introduced, which was the Red Corsairs, where you can basically, you can teleport a unit of 20 Chaos Space Marines across the battlefield if they take some casualties, kind of like what they did with Tide of Traitors, which was the cultist stratagem.
Yeah, they come back.
Yeah, so you can kind of, you actually see Chaos Marines on the board, which is something that all of us have been crying for a long time. They're not, they didn't really change the Chaos Space Marine fundamentally, but, functionally, it still has a place now because of some of the stratagems that are in there and some of the other Legion traits that they added. You can make some pretty crazy combos too with the Renegade rules. Like there's, especially since the FAQ changed the way that the Legion traits work. It now works on all characters and not just infantry, bikers, and dreadnoughts. So like now your Chaos Lord on a Juggernaut actually gets his Legion traits, which is awesome.
Yeah. Do you think so? Basically, Ablaze was, Chaos Space Marines Codex 2.0.
Essentially,
That's so. Do we think that maybe this is the way we go forward? Like from a campaign standpoint, instead of updating the books, they just continue to do a campaign, and that's how you get your 2.0.
And I think you're gonna see exactly the same kind of format that they did with the way that they released the Chaos Space Marines stuff, because they re-released the book that had some of the stuff from Vigilus Ablaze in it. So it had like the Lord Discordant, the new Dark Apostle, all that stuff. They had the Psychic Discipline for the
Master Possession.
The Master Possession, but they did not include the Black Legion rules, like the exclusive Black Legion warlord traits and artifacts and stuff. They did not release those, or the Renegade, the independent Renegade rules in the book.
Are the specialist detachments in the new Chaos Space Marine book?
No, they're not. The specialist detachments are in Vigilus Ablaze. So like if you want access to all that stuff, that's how they're going to get you to buy both. Right?
Interesting.
I think you could probably look at it more instead of this being like a Chaos Space Marines 2.0. This would be more of a Chaos Space Marines 1.5. Yeah. And I think because there's big changes, don't get me wrong, it's a major content patch, but I think, they will, like, I think there will definitely be future Chaos Space Marine codexes in this edition that are big overhauls to certain things.
Yeah.
Or maybe not Chaos. Maybe Chaos isn't the right example, but I would be shocked if there's not another Space Marines codex.
There will be.
And there's lots of Space Marine context in both Ablaze and Defiant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I said, I think I would say that I think a lot of these, my guess is that these campaigns will kind of be like these 1.5s, and then there will still be big reboots for some of these.
Yeah, I think you'll see that eventually, but I don't think that will be within the next year. Like, at least for me, for my stuff.
I mean,
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's not what I'm saying. I'm not trying to predict the timeline. I'm just trying to predict the amount of changes.
Yeah, I would agree, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if the next campaign book is kind of, instead of more like, Vigilus Defiant, where yes, there was updates to Space Marines, but like Ablaze kind of took Chaos Space Marines forward, where Defiant was just kind of, not, formations or whatever, but whatever you want to call them.
Specialist attachments.
Specialist attachments. I still call them formations. It was that in a few updates, but like Ablaze definitely, I think, moved the rules for Chaos Space Marines forward. And now we have a bunch of Space Marines that aren't in my book. So like we have, the whole set of Shadow Spear, as well as the new tank that they previewed at Warhammer Fest, which I know has gotten a lot of criticism because Primaris Space Marines need a dedicated transport, but I really like the big gun, because I like the repulsor tank anyway because of the way it looks like a Bradley fighting vehicle, and now you put that bigger turret on it and the bigger cannon, like, yes, please. I'm not a big fan of the plasma, but I know that they have to put that in there, for everyone else. But the big old las cannon, I can't wait to see its stats and blast some things with it.
Yeah, and it kind of fills a need for your force, especially if you're trying to run all Primaris, because one of the things that you're really lacking in is some solid anti-armor that aren't Hellblasters, because Hellblasters will just get wiped off the board if people prioritize their targets right. But it gives you a sturdy base to have an anti-tank weapon on, and it's fast. It can fly. Like, there's a lot of good things. There's a lot of things to like about those tanks, and people give them hell. But I'm like, look, that's a flying Land Raider. That's what that is. It doesn't have a 2+ save, but.
Well, I know that I can say for myself personally, an owner of 2 repulsors that don't see the table, is they're so flippin' expensive.
Oh,
and like, I can only imagine that this one is going to, because it's still a transport as well, is going to be at least the same amount of points.
Yeah.
And so you get to a point where it's like, I do think Primaris deeply need that kind of heavy weapons platform. I just don't know what their vision for how this fits into your common game, because I think most people are gonna struggle to fit this into 1,000 points, and 1,500 will be, I think, the smallest game you could play with one of those.
You also got some sneaky anti-tank in the new Marines, the Phobos Marines, because they wound anything on a hit roll of 6. Like, there's some cool little ways to force saves on vehicles with those too.
Yeah, I'm just saying about that tank in particular, why I think that one gets some hell.
I'm just talking though.
And I completely understand why it got. I mean, because the original loadout of the one that I have is with the twin last cannon layout,
the last
basically.
Talon,
the last Talon and the last cannon. So, like, I was using it as an anti-vehicle. I don't think it hit hard enough. But I just like the aesthetics of the new model, and I think
gorgeous, yeah.
And I think it's going to be, from a point standpoint, I think it's going to be very similar, because I think the transport capacity will probably be cut in half like they used to do with the old Land Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it'll all balance out from a point standpoint. But they are very, very pricey. And really the repulsor kind of shines with the heavy bolters and the anti-infantry one, just because you throw so many dice, even though it can be anti-whatever, because it just throws a lot of dice.
Yeah, I think that's just like an interesting thing where they get into a bit of a rut with the model first design philosophy, because like I don't think a repulsor is unfairly priced by any means for everything that it does, but it just does so many things and has so many weapons caked onto it that you're kind of like, did I really need a tank with 42 different weapons that flies and transport capacity? And
Well, and then like you get into the whole thing where like if I'm playing Danny and Danny's like, okay, I'm gonna shoot my repulsors now. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go get a drink. You want anything? Like,
Yeah. And there's so many different things on it. It's like I can't remember what. Like there's a frag launcher, a crack launcher, heavy bolters, storm bolters,
yeah,
onslaught
there's so many
gatling cannon,
similarly named
flying
things.
stubbers. It's like I don't know.
Yeah, there are a lot of little modifications with the anti-air missile pod that's in the back, and like you said, frag launchers and different missiles off the side. It's a lot, and that's why the points go. And unfortunately, we live in a game where, yes, even though it was nerfed a little bit in the FAQ, but the Castellan exists, and if there's a Castellan on the board, like that tank is done. And I don't think it can do it in reverse. That's why I'm excited to see the large last cannon.
Yeah, I think you'll see a little bit of a return to some armor now that the Castellan can only get to a 4-up invulnerable save and not to a 3-up. But like, and the fact that it costs like a bajillion CP to get it to function correctly now. But yeah, I think you'll see more of tanks exactly like that. I think you'll see more like from AdMech, you'll see more of the Onager Doom Crawlers and stuff like that back into the meta. Because they have a nasty gun on them. The anti-tank weapon anyway.
Yeah, that neutron laser is pretty potent.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Go ahead.
Hopefully we will get a dedicated transport at some time. And I do like, from a design standpoint, I really like it. Took some flack because it used the repulsor chassis, but that's the way original Space Marines or OG Space Marines, like the Rhino was the chassis for everything except the Land Raider. Yep. So I really like the fact that it has that, and hopefully the dedicated transport is really just the repulsor without a top. So,
well, and I think something just to remember too is like when they did that interview on Voxcast, where they talked about how the design space for the Space Marines and especially the Primaris Marines, the same logic in my mind goes to the vehicles as it did with the armor that they wear. Like it's just like an underlay and they bolt everything on, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me that they would design the vehicles the same way. Like they're multi-use vehicles, like a multi-use chassis, and they just bolt on whatever they need right before they go. So
I think I would have been just a little more excited with the design of the new tank if they had given it side sponsons, just to something to break it up. Because like that was what made the Predator look so freaking cool compared to a Rhino, is it had the side sponsons as an option. And that's not to say it's not coming in the future by any means, but I think if that popped out and they're like, oh, and then you can also put these bad boys on the sides, I'd be like, whoa, this thing looks crazy. But
yeah.
But anyway, we got in a whole different tangent about new models coming out and metas, and I'm glad we went there. But to wrap up Ablaze, story was typical campaign disappointment story, but we are very appreciative for the new rules and the setting that we have to play in. Does that basically sum it up? Anybody have anything else to add to Ablaze?
I would just like to say that even though I kind of crapped on it, bad 40K is still good 40K at the end of the day. So
that's right.
Like at the end of the day, yeah, I'm sitting here complaining, but it's still a book that I read and I enjoyed mostly, and enjoy it more than many other things that are available to me for entertainment.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to take a break and we'll be back a couple minutes with the next segment.
Hey, welcome back. So in this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about something that's going to be affecting pretty much everybody in the hobby within the next month or so. Actually, I think the pre-order for these is going to go up on June 8th, and that's the new contrast paints line from GW. They went into a pretty good amount of detail at Warhammer Fest about what the paints are and how you're supposed to use them, and they completely destroyed Duncan Rhodes and his tagline of two thin coats by just saying one thick coat.
It's a great marketing campaign.
But that campaign would not exist without Duncan. So,
well, that would be my point. Is if it's two thin coats, and if he created that, well, then it's just happenstance. But I want to give GW some credit. They may have been working on this. This might have been a long term. No, it was probably just luck of the draw, and it's great. It fits right in there.
Yeah,
they couldn't count on the internet to meme that though.
Yes,
That's true.
Because that's where it comes from. The internet memed the hell out of him saying it all the time.
yeah. And it's like the funniest, some of the funny ones I saw in the scene was like, what does Duncan wear outside? 2 thin coats. That
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So, but I personally, I'm actually very excited about these, but I'll get into some of why I'm excited about these kind of intermingled with what I'm going to ask you guys. So, so Jerod, we'll start with you. What is your initial take on these contrast paints? What do you think they're going to do? What do you think they're going to do for the hobby?
So I think that they're going to be able to accomplish what a lot of people have been trying to do since the latest paint line came out. So I have personally tried to wash paint models. So back in the day, before I sold them with the lizard men, my skinks were all wash painted. So primed white, and then used washes to get color on the skin. And then I would go in and brush paint, with your base paints and your highlights and washes to do like weapons and shields and all that stuff. But the green skin was primed white and then washed green.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always a little upset because I couldn't quite get like a highlight to work when I did that there wasn't, the tones didn't match. So if I tried to go back with a brush and do a highlight on top of a wash, the color saturation didn't look right. And so I've seen other people be able to do it a little better, but the difference between the consistency in the current washes and the current base or layer paints just didn't work for that. And then I've looked at what they've done now with the contrast paints, with the test models, and I'm like, oh, that's exactly the effect that I was trying to pull off with the wash paints. So I'm excited to see how they work out.
I think you and I were actually doing a lot of that same stuff right around the same time, because that was when we were really hot and heavy into fantasy. And I had wash painted essentially 40 Chaos Marauders.
That's right.
At the same time.
Yep.
Like I did all my skin tones that way. And that was before I really started airbrushing.
Right.
Got them all primed white, wash painted the majority of them. So I was right there in the same boat. And I had kind of the similar, feedback for that too, where I was like, there wasn't enough contrast there.
Yep. Contrast. There's that word.
To really push that style of painting for tabletop.
Right.
It always felt real shallow. Like my depth on my barbarians was like super thin. I felt like they all just looked like they hadn't been out in the sun at all.
Right.
So I definitely agree with you there. I do think that it opens up a cool space, especially for Lizardmen players, because I feel like these were designed especially for Lizardmen players.
Yeah. Well, I think about Lizardmen,
whatever you want to call them now.
Yeah, I think about Bloodletters. I think about Plague Bearers. Anything that's
organic shapes. I've been thinking about organic shapes.
Yeah, I mean, but they did all those test colors. They've got all those Primaris Marines in the test colors, and they look really good.
Yep. Danny, I know you're kind of our typical GW traditional. I like my line highlights.
I'm an old man yelling at clouds. You can say it.
Yeah.
I don't like change.
Yeah.
I have to disagree on the Primaris things look amazing, because I think the contrast paints are really exciting. I want to say that up front. I'm going to buy the hell out of them. I'm going to own them in my range, and I'm going to use them. But I think they have kind of oversold the magic of contrast paints, especially this concept of one thick coat. Because I have seen a lot of these Primaris Marines that just look like somebody just globbed some paint on it. And it's like, yeah, it's settled in the crevices, but I still see the splotches that you see from, especially anything that's not organic shaped. You see the splotches that you see from the normal washes. And so in the best things that I've seen come out of it, even with the organic shapes, are some of the professional painters that have use the new medium to kind of water them down, then even
Yep.
use the contrast paints in a more methodical and placed way by putting them in recesses and using the colors to kind of wet blend and stuff. And that's where I've seen it really shine. And I think that makes it some techniques a lot more accessible to
Yep.
painters, but I don't think this is a panacea that's just going to all of a sudden like change your 50 shelves of gray into these amazing models. I think it's a great tool, and personally, I just think they are what washes should be. Because there's nothing that a wash does now that a contrast paint can't do better.
Right. And I agree with you. Like I think they do open up a lot of really cool space for just new experimentation, which is what I'm the most
Absolutely.
excited about. Because like to me, these open up a lot of things that you would try and do with like oil paints. You know, they're very their working life is a lot longer than the traditional GW acrylic paints that we've been used to. So that's going to be something that we'll have to adjust to. But I think like if you like to weather things, if you like to create interesting color transitions, I think these are going to be awesome for people who like to do those kind of things. And there's so many other applications too, but those are just two things that come straight to the forefront of my mind.
Oh yeah, and I would be lying if I didn't say that like the idea of contrast paints make horde armies infinitely more appealing.
Absolutely.
Like, that they've said that from the get-go, and I think that is a great selling point because y'all know that I have recently gotten out of Age of Sigmar, but I've also recently said, oh, those goblins look super cool. But there's no way I'm painting 100 goblins. It ain't happening.
But I might now.
Right. And so therein lies its own kind of virtuous circle of marketing. But I'm just not convinced that they are this magic that they're really selling right now.
That'd be awesome if you got goblins.
Easy, Jason.
And like in the first thing that came to my mind when I saw them, I was like, oh, I can paint my demons so fast now. Like, and it's just because like I was doing a lot of those things, the super thin paints on my demons anyway. So, then they've basically, these are like made for that type of army where it's like very organic, but it's like lots of similar color tone. It's going to be super easy. But I know one of our resident non-painter or person who likes to not paint or doesn't
he likes
like
to paint.
or likes to act like he wants to paint but then doesn't.
Owns all the tools to paint, just doesn't use them.
Correct.
That's right.
Jason, what are you most excited about this?
Oh, I'm gonna buy these paints. I'm gonna open them. I'm gonna buy them. I'm excited because the opposite of like Danny. So I think that one, from a marketing standpoint, like it's a great pitch to get items painted. Like as I've gotten older and more ingrained in the hobby, I'll be the first to admit, like I love a good paint job. And when I first started playing, and anyone that didn't have a good paint job, it was like, oh, that model looks like crap. And now it's like, whatever. You have paint on the model. When I'm standing 3 feet away from it, it looks fine. And I think that this tool or this paint line of paints allows us to achieve that. Like, I've stopped like even going forward with my painting method. And just because I don't like, I want to like when I try these paints, I want to be able to paint something, especially like the Godsworn Hunt, and I want them to match if this is the line that I want to use. And I think that getting 3 colors, that tabletop standard with these paints is so much more achievable because really it's a base paint, a layer, a wash put into one. Not with the amount of detail that I think that we're all accustomed to in this group with, the level that you guys paint, but to get that basic tabletop standard out there, I think is great. And I'm excited because it's a GW paint. So these lines are made to work with the old ones. So most of my armies are painted with traditional GW colors. So they blend right in, or should blend right in. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to trying it to see if it does simplify the way that I paint. And then more importantly, like I do have an airbrush and I enjoy airbrushing. I want to see what I can achieve with, the gradient highlight zenithal Did I say that right?
That's right.
Zenithal highlight what I can achieve. I did watch a YouTube video today where they did a Zenithal highlight and the yellow did not work. So that was a little disappointing, but then they go back and they do it with a darker color, like a red. And it worked pretty well. Like there was, even the black recesses tinted red. So that was really exciting to see. Is it the greatest paint job ever? No, but then again, this line is not meant to be the top of the line. And I think that they're pushing that forward in their line. Like it's about paint your model, like get it table ready, get it battle ready, get it parade ready. I really like those steps because it opens the hobby for more people, and especially me, who I do not like to paint.
So the interesting thing I think that opens up for the Zenithal priming and highlighting stuff is that if you really start to delve into some color theory, I think that the Zenithal prime, like if you prime not black, I think you're going to get some really cool effects that would take a lot of effort to do otherwise. Like for example, that Imperial Fist Marine in that video that you watched today, where they use the Yandin yellow to try and make that Imperial Fist. If you had primed with a different color other than black and then done the Zenithal highlight, so if you had done like and people are going to look at me crazy for saying this, but like even if you did like a super dark pink underneath and then you did the Zenithal highlight over top, because that pink is sitting on the opposite side of the color wheel from the almost the opposite from the yellow, you're going to get a really super desaturated yellow rather than just a black underneath.
Interesting.
And then that's where you get into some of the color theory stuff that people really just don't know about. Like if you really want to make a red super dark but still rich, and Danny, correct me if I'm wrong, but like you would basically do like add green into that to where like you want to basically add your contrasting color to that paint to help desaturate it.
Yeah, like a dark, you want like a forest green.
Yes.
Like you want something really pigmented
and
saturated, which is what you said. And that
so
will absolutely do.
And I think that those paint ranges open up an interesting way for people to explore painting in general. And so that's what I'm excited about doing, is like when I paint my bloodletters, I'm going to paint them green first and then do the Zenithal highlight and then do the red over top and see how it looks, right? It may work, it may not. Like, I don't know. But that's the cool part about it is we're going to get to experiment, and I think it's going to be a really interesting couple months where we see what people really try and do with these, because the GW method is a very basic method. When you get these into the hands of all these people who are like just acclaimed artists within the community,
right,
what they're going to do with those is going to be completely different and be like, what did you just do with that? Kind of deal. So I'm super excited, just like you are, but for different reasons. And I'm pumped to have them just to play with.
Yeah. I mean, we all know, like, I like to paint the details, right? I hate, and I know I got an airbrush, and everyone that's listening is going to be like, just do it with your airbrush, Jason. But it, like, for me, I'd rather just have the model appear and have most of the big bulky work done, and then I can pick out the purity seals and the crests, the eagles, and all that. Like, that's what I like to do. I don't like to do the bulk of the work. So,
right. There's only so much that an airbrush can do for you on a base coat anyway.
Correct.
Well, I think that's kind of thing where I'm coming from. So I think that applies to every paint. Yep. That every paint can only do so much. They're all tools. And I get that this one may be able to do more than some other paints, but I'm skeptical that it is as utilitarian as they're shifting it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like they're advertising it as magic paint, and it's not. You're still going to have to know how to apply it correctly, and you're still going to have to practice, like your first couple models with it, you're gonna be like, oh my god, that looks terrible. Especially because it's different than what we use now.
Yeah. And you'll still need brush control, right?
Yep.
Like, so if you want red rimmed shoulder pads on your Space Marines, like you're not going to be able to put the blue contrast paint on and then paint over it with the red, right? Like you're going to have to keep the blue off of where you want the red and then go back over with the red.
I do think overlapping some of the contrast paints is going to be shockingly difficult to undo for a lot of people, because once you throw 2 coats of that shit on there, you might as well have just painted it with a base paint.
Yeah, that is one thing that they're not really, they kind of gloss over, is like, well, if you mess up, just hit it with this primer in a pot, like, and that requires brush control. They're definitely skipping that if you slop it onto his gloves or slop it onto an item, like for a Space Marine, his gun's gonna be black. Like, I can't just hit it with the dark blue and then hit it with the black contrast paint and expect it to look the way you want it to look.
Yeah.
But to me, it's another tool in the toolbox, which I always like having more tools. And I'm glad you guys are excited about it. And do you guys have anything else that you want to add about it? If not, I'll kind of put a bow on this and we'll go on to our next segment.
The new website. Like, I think when you mentioned the new
CitadelColor.com.
Yeah, the Citadel Color. Yep.
That is so much better than the old White Dwarf, like 3 steps. Here it is prime.
Yeah.
Here it is base. Yeah. Here it is heavy metal style. So now you know how to paint too.
You only need these 6 paints to achieve this model. Yeah. No, you don't.
It's not green.
Yeah.
It's just triangles. Just triangles or 2 circles and you have an owl.
Yeah. 2 circles, owl.
But yeah, like if you guys haven't checked it out, you should definitely go check out the website. I went and looked at it yesterday. I think it was yesterday. And they get into some more of their advanced stuff, like they get into weathering and they get into how to use different finishes, like your art coat and your Lamian medium to help like matte finishes and glossy finishes. And so there's a lot of useful information over there if you're just starting out in the hobby.
Well, and they released something, I think it was on Facebook when I saw it, that they're going to try and do a tutorial for every single Citadel miniature. So there will be a video for every miniature.
Yeah, it was part of their introductory video.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed that one.
Should be some cool stuff coming down the pipes.
Yeah. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see. We'll come back to this conversation in a couple months and find out kind of like what we feel about it after, like interesting things that we've learned about it from experimentation. And I'm interested to see Danny's take, because Danny likes his way of painting.
I like things and I hate things. Okay, guys? It's not like I professed this in front of you all.
Yes, it was definitely in your vows at your wedding. So anyway,
no middle ground with Danny.
No middle ground. Love it, hate it. So with that, we're gonna love it on over to another segment here in just a second, and we'll be back in just a minute.
All right, we're back, and I'm running a segment, and that means it's cracked glass because I don't know anything about Underworlds. All I heard is there's some stuff going on. You guys been recording like epic podcasts that might as well be War and Peace, and I ain't got time for that. And so I'm just gonna say a little undead night haunt birdie Geist thing came into my life and told me that they're doing something with the boards. They're changing up the boards. What, you can't flip a board? What's going on?
Yeah. So.
Oh my gosh.
So this week the rules for the Grand Clash in July in UK were posted at the Warhammer World, and there's a little blurb in there that says this time in the best of 3 match. So in a match, you can only ever use a board once, and that's like one side of the board. So in your 3 games, you can only ever present that board once, and that's it's pretty big from the way that you design your warband and the way that like your strategy goes in pregame. So I think we've all sat there and devised what board would be best if I play faction X with deck Y. This is the board.
Yeah.
This is the best board. And
Yeah.
now I have to pick 3 because
Right.
I cannot, even if I win the roll, I can't present the same one that I've presented before. So
yeah, it was always pretty easy to be like, okay, this is the board that I'm going to choose if I win the roll off, and this is the board that I'm going to choose if I lose the roll off, and it might be the same. Like, but for me, it's definitely going to require some thought.
Well, you can't just throw out Soul Refractor every time.
That was only when I was playing Farstriders, and not just any Farstriders, but my like, no, I'm not going to let you do anything that you want to do, Farstriders. And
So
I'm not
like a
playing that
super
anymore.
positive gameplay style.
Yeah, it was a totally positive gameplay experience.
Totally.
Well, so do you guys feel like that?
Chris.
Do you guys feel like that expands your game experience or limits it?
I feel like anything that you can add into a game that involves another level of decision making is a good thing for the game. So, yes, and that's probably not a super popular opinion, but anytime that you can't settle, like if it, certain warbands come to mind, like Stormcast Eternals that just turtle at the back of the board. Like, yes, you can still do that, but there's only 1 or 2 boards that you can really do that really well on. And now this gives an opportunity for the other player to potentially get back into the game and make it go to that third game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Well,
I think
go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go.
Well, do you think that is going to make war bands more Swiss Army knife like, or are people going to double down on specialization?
I mean, I think certain warbands are going to have more of a disadvantage for those. I think it pumps some of the 3 or 4 person warbands up a little bit because you'll have more favorable.
Yeah, you have less.
Yeah.
Less spawns.
Yeah, that's my only negative to it. So like Trace said, I think that it gives you another choice, and I think it's a good thing because now the game it's not like rinse and repeat. So if those 2 rolls go exactly the way that they went on game 1 and game 2, and I get to place my board second and I'm playing a passive warband, like I know how this game is gonna go. Like I'm putting my board down, I know exactly how I'm gonna move. So it adds a little diversity, because now the game will be different because I have to pick 2 different boards. But for me, the larger warbands is what it hurts because when I played Guard and even Godsworn, there are just some boards that put me at an extreme disadvantage to whatever my plan is. I mean, with Godsworn, and if I'm playing against Mollog, like I don't want to be a turn 1 2 hex away where I just get to get swung on from him without making him at least move once. And I'm not saying that it still can't be achieved. Like I haven't sat down and studied all the boards, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to find 3 that cannot be twisted that way.
I guess where I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around this is, so it's still best of 3, so you still have to win just 2. So ideally, you want to have 2 boards that you can set up on. And so what I'm kind of wondering is, like, when you guys are approaching this new rule change, are you just going to keep playing your style and find the 2 boards that best fit that, or are you going to try to kind of spread your deck around so that you can kind of handle more situations?
I think it's just going to require a better knowledge of the boards themselves. Like it's going to be one of those things where like any one of the 3 of us can like almost not any card, but there are a lot of cards where we could just be like, oh, this card would be good for this situation in this warband. Now we're going to have to get even further into the weeds and think about, okay, if I'm playing this person and I know that I'm going to be playing this person 3 times, what's my best opportunity for my opening hand? Like, I don't want to show everything I have. What board is best for that? So, like, it's almost you want to save your best board for second game. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Does everybody agree with that?
So, yeah, I think for me, at starting out, I will definitely try to play the warband the way that I've been playing it and find the boards that fit that the best.
Yep.
And I think
you do that for sure.
Yeah. And I think for me, that's probably just because it's going to be the easiest way, because I have settled into a decent pretty decent deck with the Ilthari's Guardians, one that I'm enjoying playing and I'm seeing a better than average amount of success with. So
it sounds like then you guys are all kind of settling on this idea that this rule change doesn't necessarily strictly impact the war bands, it more affects the player. But do you think that there are any war bands at this, besides the size thing that you guys already mentioned, but do you think there are any particular war bands that this especially hurts or especially helps? Or do you think it's just all a matter of flexing around it?
I think for me, like, I don't know the entire answer to that because I haven't played in the best of 3 yet and having to make these decisions. But like, I know the gets, like, my goal with the gets is to get everybody to move so I, can score the have 5 fighters move at the end of the turn that are still surviving. And the one board that has the 3 hexes right in a row is not crucial, but it makes that a hell of a lot easier, right? And now knowing that I can only ever do that in one of my games, it's like, oh, okay, like, can I still run that warband efficiently? And you can, but can I, like, achieve the same things with one that only have 2 together? So for me, what it's going to change is I want to study my opponent's board. So once I peel back the onion a little bit, like, yeah, I'm going to have my 3 boards. I have my number 1. Like, I have my number 1 lose the roll, number 1 win the roll, and then my 3rd backup. But I think where the game can be pushed even further is if my opponent presents board X, I know my best option may not be my number 1 or number 2 board against that board. It'll be an additional board, like, oh, I really like the way this is laid out. And I don't know, because we all just went with 1 and 2, if everybody knows all the boards, and this little tweak will make people learn all the boards.
And that's
how many boards are there? 8? 10?
There's 10, I believe.
12.
Is there 12?
Yeah. 2 from Shadespire plus the original damage hexes.
Yeah, 12.
2 from Night Vault, and then the new board set. So 12.
Yeah, there's 12.
6 physical boards, 2 sides each.
See, like, that's just a whole nother level of memorization and it's going to be super hard because you're trying to remember where the starting hexes are on all those things too, and like what's blocked and what's lethal. So it just opens up another level of strategy, and so that's a good thing to me.
Yeah.
Like and we've all had this game where it's super frustrating where you're trying to win the board roll and you just don't, and so you just get the same thing over and over. Or at least close to it, because that other person's like, no, I like my board.
Yeah.
See, but that's where that is the only negative to me. With Guard in season 1, I wanted to lose that roll every time.
Yeah.
Because I knew the board that I was going to present, and I knew what way you could flip it, but I knew I was getting 3 objectives, and no matter what way you flipped it, either you had blocking hexes up in your face or I had blocking hexes way behind. And now that if I was playing that same deck going into Nova this year, I don't really have that same option. I have 2 boards that I could do, but it really, like, it changes where those fighters would have to go, that they're really vulnerable. So and that's what I think they want. And to Trace's original point, and then we can move on, because how often can you make good radio out of boards? Like, I think the 3 fighter warbands don't see a significant change because of this.
3 and even 4. I think the 4 fighters really aren't super affected by this either.
Well, Jason, I'm not going to let you tell me how to run my segment, because I got one last question for everybody. Because personally, I kind of think when you start tweaking rules like this and adding beta rules, it has to be for a specific purpose, and that purpose should always be to make the game more competitive. And I would like each one of you to kind of tell me, do you think this rule change makes the game more competitive for player versus player?
Yes. And that's because, again, you're adding a layer of choice, and every layer of choice gives you an opportunity for a new strategy to be employed. So, like, Jason is the first one of our group that really started to, like, bluff people. And so I think you're going to get some of the similar kind of things with this too. Like, yes, it's a board and you're presenting your one board, but like you could present a really shitty board the first time out and be like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. And then the next time, like, and then but you have a plan for that board, right?
Right.
I think that there's just another level of strategy that you can start to employ here that's not really present currently, which does in turn make it a more competitive experience.
Yeah.
Jerod?
So I say yes, and I think it's for the reason that I ran the Soul Refractor board with the Farstriders, is it's going to prevent me from running that board 2 games in a row, or running exactly the board that I want 2 games in a row. And being able to do exactly what I want to do without you being able to do anything about it.
Yep.
And Jason?
I will also say yes. The only caveat to that is I think from a Grand Clash standpoint, will be another piece for new players to get experienced with. And for that, it's a double-edged sword. Like, yes, they're not going to get the same play experience 2 games in a row playing the same opponent, which is I think what they're trying to achieve.
Yep.
But at the same time, it can be a little intimidating to be like, I don't know here. I'm just going to throw this board out here. I don't know. So, but it is a competitive decision. So it's good in my opinion.
All right. Well, thanks for helping me wrap my little pea brain around this game that you 3 love. I'm still not there yet, but I'll keep asking questions.
It's a solid 2.5, Danny. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, you did say that you wanted to play Gobos, so that's why I threw the Gits thing in there.
Oh, all right. Yeah. I see. It's shiny.
Stab you in the knee.
All right. Well, we'll be back in a couple seconds.
Welcome back. So in this segment, we're going to start something new, and it's going to be brand new and hopefully kind of keep us trucking as we go along, recording the podcast and playing games. So I was thinking the other day that we don't play enough 40K.
Agreed.
I think Danny was sending me mind waves.
Well, I think it's hard to not play enough 40K when you don't play 40K.
Yeah. What's 40K? I don't even know.
Right, exactly. And so we've kind of tossed back and forth, offline over the past year or so, trying to kick off a 40K campaign. And I decided that I'm just going to bite the bullet, and that's what we're going to do. And so, we'll kind of document it as we go along. We'll try to keep these segments short, just so that you guys don't get bored listening to us drone on and on about the nuances of the games that we played where you weren't there, but we want you guys to be a part of this journey as we go. So we're just this is basically session 0. So for anybody that's done, a pen and paper RPG, you usually have a session 0 to set expectations for how the game is going to go. I have basically told Jason, Danny, and Trace that I'm willing to kind of run the campaign as the GM and play the NPC faction as the Tyranids, with the premise that there will be a planet or system, we don't know, that is under invasion from a Tyranid fleet, and the end result will be that the Tyranids will consume everything. So I don't care what happens with these guys, I'm going to win. Which is the most important thing in a narrative campaign, is who wins.
I thought the rule number 1 of being a good GM was like, don't make the story about you, make the story about the other players.
Well, title of the campaign.
Jerod wins.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Right. Well, it isn't about me because my story's already written. So you guys are going to get to write your own stories in my written story. So I'm gonna run the Tyranids. I'm gonna try to organize the campaign. And so these are my initial thoughts, and we'll go through and we'll just talk about it for maybe 15 minutes or so, and because I do have some questions for you guys. But I thought it would be cool if I worked with each of you individually to figure out a specific end result or goal that you had for the next 4 battles or the next piece of the story arc, an end goal that you have for the overall campaign, and things like that. So those would be conversations that we would have offline, but it would give each of you an individual goal outside of just win this battle or take this territory or whatever. So it could be, you're trying to find the MacGuffin, or, you're trying to rescue your long lost Primarch, or, whatever
the MacGuffin.
Okay.
In 40K, it's a MacGuffinus.
MacGuffinicus Totalis.
Narfle the Garthok.
Yeah. Is your goal to Narfle the Garthok?
Fun fact, my first pet, cat named Garthok. True story.
Nice. That's a fun fact.
100% true.
Oh, man. That's amazing. Now I'm totally derailed.
Sorry.
Yep.
No, that's okay. So I guess leading into it, the kind of the first question is like, what faction are you guys interested in kind of running?
Well, do you want me to really surprise you, Jerod?
I do. I want to be totally surprised.
Danny's faction.
It rhymes with Schmaltra Marines.
Oh, shocking.
That's because it's the only faction I own, unless my 3-woman army of Sister of Battles count.
I think, she comes back to life, so I think you can do that.
Over and over and over.
Well, it's a narrative campaign, so the rule of one is done. So she can just come back as many times as she wants.
There we go.
It'll totally work. That's thematic. So with the Ultramarines, you've purged most of your standard Marines, right?
Oh yeah, all of it.
So it'll be all Primaris?
Primaris.
Oh.
Cool.
So yeah,
that'll
I'll be full
cool.
Primaris. I got some ideas about I think I want my plot to be pretty character driven.
Okay.
Less
That makes
big
sense.
stuff, more small stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be kind of a continuing theme across at least for Danny and I, because I've got ideas about stuff for me too. But
So
I'll be playing Chaos Space Marines because I have all these new shiny models that I need to get built and painted, and this is going to give me a good opportunity to do that. So I have been working on some things outside of that, but we'll talk about that in another section. But I'm excited about, I think I talked about this previously when we were discussing some of the campaign stuff initially in one of our early episodes where we talked about maybe doing one of these, but building on a character that was represented in some of the books but never really expanded on. And so I'm going to kind of take that and run with it and see where that goes, but we'll discuss more about that later, who that character is. And those of you who've listened to the show from the beginning probably know who that is already, and that I've made a conversion for that model. So I think that involving some of the cool special character rules from the chapter approved would be a cool thing to add in, to where we can build our own character, essentially build our own special character. I think that's an interesting bit that we could dive into.
Yeah, do a throwback to the days of 3rd edition when your Space Marine captain was fully customizable. He could have psionics and
where Purity Seal actually did something.
Yeah, where Terminator honors mattered.
Yeah, and
for 1 point.
That's
and
right.
Those rules are really. I don't know if anybody's actually gone into them, but I know when they came out, we were all super excited about it.
Yeah.
I'm grabbing them right now. I got them right here.
Right. You got cool things like +1 to your invuln. You got things like ignores cover. Extra attacks when fighting characters.
Yep.
Bonus to weapon skill, halving damage.
Yeah, there's all kinds of basically any rule that you've seen on any of the special characters. It's probably in there somewhere.
There's Holy Relics and Sacred Relics. Terminator Armors. A model with Terminator Honors adds +1 to its attacks characteristic. Note that this bonus has already been included in the characteristics of veteran sergeants and any Space Marine who are equipped with Terminator armor and therefore may not be taken again.
Oh, nice. That's the 3rd edition Space Marine Codex right there.
Yes, sir, looking at it.
Nice. That's awesome.
I'm not a collector, you're a collector.
Yeah. So Jason, what about you? What faction are you thinking?
So for me, I'm fine if we leave it up to you guys, or do we put it out there for the listeners?
Ooh.
That could be interesting.
Chaos is a ladder. I like it.
So I think I would prefer to play Crimson Fist, but then I will really struggle having to play Danny with the Ultramarines from a narrative standpoint. I mean, the Crimson Fist is my largest army, but I do have a very large Necron army that I have never put on the table. So, I mean, love to get your guys. Let me preface the reason that the Necron army, I want to play it. I think that'll be a fun play style. I have a lot of models for it. A lot of models that are already painted. The reason is from a character development standpoint, I don't know if I identify with a Necron Lord like I would a Space Marine Lieutenant or Captain. So it's really, but it's up to you because I know that you may have some storylines to allow Danny and I to fight against each other, but I think from a narrative story, that would be more fun. So I'm good. You guys can vote, or we can put it to our listeners to vote.
Jay, would it make you more excited if your leader was like a Catan instead of a Necron Lord?
No, I just like no.
Nope.
Valid question though.
No. I mean, I like the Necron Lord, but there's just not a lot of customization for me. Like, you know, when I think of customization, I think of Terminator armor or a cool gun. You know, but I'll play.
Would you like your scythe blue or green?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, you know, obviously the Necrons would be kind of easier to fit in, because then we have 4 fairly distinct factions.
I mean, that's what I would personally prefer, but I also know it's kind of a selfish choice because I don't provide options. I have my one choice, so.
Sure. Well, Jason could give you his Necrons, and you could play those.
I mean, I would if that's what you wanted to do.
You're so amenable, Danny.
Yeah, I'm fine either way. I'm more like the questions I have around this, Jerod, are like I would like to see ramp ups and ramp downs from scale. Like, you know, we have the Urban Conquest board and like that. The overall strategy of the world or the system is what intrigues me.
Yeah, and I have some thoughts on that. Like, I think starting out, keeping it to core 40k rules is probably going to be the best way to go, just for us because we don't get to play all the time. Yep. And then, you know, so like the initial like prologue chapter or whatever, however it plays itself out, would be just standard 40k. But we could start small, like do a 500 point battle or 750 point battle or do power level or whatever makes sense, and then kind of ramp up from there. I did have some thoughts about. I was thinking about it this weekend and looking at the old Mordheim experience chart. So like you get a point for every battle that, like, so there were henchmen in Mordheim, which were basically units that then split into individual models when you played the game. But the idea was that like your henchman models would get like a point for every battle so they survived, and then they would get a point like if they killed a unit, like if they wiped out another model, or in this case it would be another unit. You know, so capped at like 2 experience points per game, but you know, every 5 experience points that henchman unit would gain a skill. And so you could do that with your, like even with your in-game units. So your unit of Hellblasters, well, they survived a game, they got an experience point, and they took out, you know, I don't know, a Hellbrute. So they get another experience point. So after 3 games, they've got enough experience points to level up. And so they get, I don't know, like, you know, and we'd have to figure out, and I would work with you guys to figure out like what makes sense, what seems fair. Because right, like reroll 1s on Hellblasters obviously does not seem fair, because then why would you not just overeat all the time?
It could be like a 4 deployment type thing.
Yeah,
there are multiple options.
I mean, it could be like a +1 move, or it could be, you know, +1 toughness or something like that. That, you know, something that translates. I mean, you know, and I think that there are some. I think there are different books floating around, you know, from older versions of 40k that have progressive rules that you can use as your units kind of grow over the course of a campaign that we can certainly look at and rely on. But
Vigilus Defiant has some.
Does it?
Mm-hmm.
I forgot that.
I would just ask that, for me personally, one thing that I would love to see is I would love for you to surprise me in the game. Like
Okay.
so many campaigns are just built around like here we played a game and then I
Yeah.
told you some story, and then we played the same game again just with different armies, and then I told
Yeah.
you some story. Do some
Right.
shit on the board that
Gotcha.
reflects what's happening.
So have like some magical mystery
Yeah, because like
in
to
game.
me, like to this day, the most vivid tabletop wargaming memory of my life. I was in sixth grade. I went to one of like the summer Games Workshop events, and it was this huge table that ran the whole length of the store, and it was Chaos versus Imperium. And halfway through the battle, the store owner like pulled this little trap door out of one of the terrain pieces, and a freaking Land Raider came out and just like started mowing stuff down. And it was so exciting because it was that whole game was just built around everybody just brought one like troops squad. And so to introduce something that big and that chaotic and that powerful suddenly changed the game in great ways. It gave people things to focus on, and it was so unexpected, and it was just it felt thematic and cool, and I just love it. I think that would be awesome.
Okay.
So you want Jerod to just randomly take control of my Knight Castellan? Is that what you're telling me?
I mean, whatever. Like if it's a
Whatever
like,
it
but
is.
seriously, like the Necron, if the Necron army, like he's got some Necron plague that just took some stuff over. I don't know. I don't have the ideas. I'm not the idea man.
Well,
I just want to
the-
be surprised.
or I pull your unit of Hellblasters off the table and replace it with a unit of Hellblasters painted in Alpha Legion colors.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that would be, or Fallen Angels, whatever. Like anything would be like something that just all of a sudden turns the game on its head.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that would be really cool. Like, Danny and I are playing, and all of a sudden, Tyranids pop up, right? And then we have to fight them as well as fighting each other. Or
Choose the moment.
yeah. Or if I am Necrons, like, he walks over a slumbering Necrons on the table. Like, I already have my army, but there's some that are just like on an objective, and he awakens those, and all of a sudden he's got to fight those guys right away. I think those are some cool narrative style things that we can definitely work in. And honestly, I probably should play Necrons, even though my story will suck.
Well, I just think like it'd be way more fun to go. Like, imagine going into a game like, all right, I'm playing Trace's Chaos, and this is what I have to bring to play this Chaos. Like, this is what I'm tactically bringing. Then all of a sudden, none of that mattered. Like, I would rather get steamrolled in a complete surprise, like crazy GM moment, than go and grind out the same game I've played a million times.
No, that makes sense.
We've only really played each other twice, Danny.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. I meant the royal we.
I know.
I was in Britain. I get to do that.
That's true. You were.
Ah,
Well, I think that's a good start, and it'll definitely be some stuff to think about. But I think in the interest of time and not journeying on and on, we can wrap up here unless anybody's got some last minute ideas or complaints they want to throw out.
I think it would be interesting as far as like the going back and touching on the upgrade stuff. I think it would be interesting to offer that up to the group as a vote.
What do you mean?
Instead of like just trying, because y'all know how my brain works. Like I'll be like, oh, I can do this thing, but like offering it up.
The choice for the upgrade being up
Yes.
for vote. Yeah.
Yes.
That makes sense. Yeah, so there's group input like, what do you think about this character? What do you think about these upgrades for my character? Does that make sense? Or am I just being a neckbeard cheesemonger?
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
I also think there could be something cool where like it would be a lot of work on your end, Jerod, but like tie upgrades to specific achievements. So like you have to do like not just like, oh, here are your points to spend, but like if you want to get that extra attack, you have to do this crazy feat of strength to earn that extra attack.
Yeah. Like you need to wipe out 4 units in close combat.
Or something that kind of puts your character
battles.
at a disadvantage to begin with, so that it's a hard thing to achieve. And then once you do it, you feel accomplished. It's not just like a ticking of a box. It's like, no, he did this crazy thing, and now he's able to.
Yeah.
Or she.
Achievement unlocked.
It's the 41st millennium.
It is the 41st millennium. It is known for its progressive cultural stance.
It's your 40K gamer score.
Yeah. Cool. Well, hopefully we actually get this thing kicked off, and then maybe a couple episodes from now we'll have played a game or two. So we can talk about that and talk about how the campaign's actually going.
Yay, 40K.
Yeah. Let's
40
get some-
yay.
Right? Cool. Well, so we'll take a break here, and then we'll come back and wrap up the show. Welcome back, and thanks for listening. This was episode 740. Yay!
Yeah.
As we've said, we appreciate everybody taking the time to listen. You can find us on Facebook, so Battle Mallet Podcast on Facebook. Find us on Twitter, Battle Mallet 1. Find us on the Instas, Battle Mallet PCast. Wherever you're listening, we appreciate all the subscriptions. And if you can give us a review, so leave those 5-star reviews on Facebook and iTunes. And that's not really for self-gratification. I don't want to speak for everybody, but we're going to make this podcast. We don't really care what you think.
Wait, what?
But if you like what we're doing and you want other people to have the chance to find our podcast, leaving us reviews is the best way to do that.
Listen, give a 5-star review and then just say all the negative stuff. It's
That's
fine.
right. Yeah. And we'll take that feedback to heart, too.
Yeah,
Let's
you
be real, we're
5-star
going to look
hate us.
at a 5-star review more than we're going to look at a 1-star. So
That's true. Yeah. That's actually a very good point. I would probably just straight ignore any 1-star review. I ignore those when I buy products, so.
Yeah.
1,000 1-star reviews? That doesn't matter.
So if you're gonna hate us, 5-star hate us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So thanks to Danny being here. We're actually kind of doing pretty good on time. So does anybody have any closing thoughts or remarks?
Danny, we're glad you're back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back, even if it is getting dangerously close to my pumpkin hour.
It is getting dangerously close.
Come hang out with me in Discord. That's my plug.
Oh yeah, Discord. Yeah, find us on Discord. Join our Discord server. I will probably not be on, as we mentioned early on in the show. My hobby time is gonna dip away for a couple of weeks because I'm moving. But Jason's usually in there not hobbying, just hanging out because he's bored.
Just hanging out.
Yeah, Trace will be in there hobbying sometimes. Danny turns into a pumpkin, so don't look for him.
No, sometimes I surprise you with a
That's true.
drive-by, and then I'm out.
With a drive-by, nope, or yep, or that's dumb. Yeah. So anyway, so thanks for listening. Thanks again. And we are 3 dads and a man who knows no shades of gray.
Hey.
This is
What you
Jerod.
did there. This is Danny.
This is Trace.
And I'm Jason Tableu Murray. Get the hell out of here.
Peace.
The Battle Mallet podcast is protected under the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find more information via links on podcast.battle-mallet.com. Music by Anno Domini Beats.
I wondered if that was what was going on. I'm touched.
In all the right ways.
With the table loop.
Hey.